Hi, yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi everybody.
Hello. Go ahead.
So this thing is going to faint so that it's not burning too much battery power. But I have it plugged.
Hello. I can hear you. Janet, try now.
Okay, I'll hang up the phone.
Okay, well, can you hear me now, Ken? Have we been on air? Janet said we weren't on air, but can you hear me, Ken?
I hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh, I sure do. How about that? Well, Ken, have you been able to hear me on the show? Have I been talking to myself, or who's here, area code 216? Can you hear me, area code 216? Yes, no? Okay, well, Ken, go ahead and introduce yourself, and we'll get the show started. I thought it's been going for a while. Can you hear me? Ken? Ken, is that you?
Well,
Hello?
this is Ken. Can you hear me now?
Okay. Yeah, you're coming in on a 216 number. Is that your wife's?
No. My screen says I'm on the 7207.
Ken, is that you? Yeah, that's fine. I can hear echo. I'm not sure exactly what's going on. Yeah, now there you are.
Can you hear me, TJ? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, for earlier, there was nothing. I couldn't hear you. I couldn't hear anybody. So, okay, here we are.
Same. I couldn't hear anybody either until just now.
That's very interesting.
Ooh.
All right. It's sort of spooky. Well, we're not going to have, apparently, we're not going to have Terry on tonight, but I guess she can come on another night, and that's okay. So we're going to do Allied Command Secret Space Paranormal Researchers. All right, folks, if you've got copy up to this time, thank you for being patient. If you haven't, we apologize, but we'll start. Okay, this time we are CE5 Contact the Experiencers, and this time I have Ken R. Johnston and Janet Carol Lessin. So, Ken, let's go ahead and introduce you and see if we can't get started here. Go ahead, Ken, introduce yourself if you don't mind.
Oh, thank you very much, TJ. Those that may have known me or heard of me, I was one of the first 4 civilian astronauts on the Apollo program, and in charge of the data and photo control department that kept all the information and the pictures around the moon and everything that was sampled and picked up, and as well as sending the samples out. Well, I thought I was right on the very, very front edge of everything until the last few years I realized that there was a lot more that we discovered on the moon and on Mars now that was all part of the secret space program that I didn't know about. So since I had all the records and all the documents and everything else, I got dubbed with the title the NASA whistleblower. Well, I didn't ask for that, but if that's what it takes to get the rest of the truth out so we can all get a chance to know where we're at on the space program and with contact to extraterrestrials, I'm up for the game, and that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Ken, for helping us tonight with our Command Secret Space Paranormal Researchers. Janet Carol Lessin, would you please introduce yourself and tell us after that about your Aquarian radio in our syndication? Go ahead, Janet, please.
Hi. Aloha, everybody. I'm Janet Carol Lessin. I'm coming to you from Maui, Hawaii. And, it's interesting that Ken is talking about the secret space program. The secret military has been in operation, the Breakaway Civilization, for as long as there's been history. We've always had this part that is in the know and the other part that's hidden from the general society. So I'm uncovering a mystery that I had where I was working for the military on Johnston Atoll. So I had an incident, it's called a My Labs incident, and we're going to be talking about that in our upcoming book that TJ and I are co-authoring called Portal Stargate, and that'll be out probably by fall of 2019. We're working on that. Might be even summer. Just depends on a few factors. But I've been an experiencer, lifelong contactee since the crib, probably before. I have memories of making a choice, coming down into 3D physicality, and I thought I was crazy for a while, but I encounter many other people that have memories of who they were before, and we often explore that in hypnosis, past life memories, concurrent lives on other planets, other dimensions, vibratory frequencies. So that's what I bring to the table, is a different perspective. But Ken was in the NASA program, but he's uncovering his involvement in the secret space program, and we're encouraging Theresa J. Morris to come forth with her episodes and encounters she had with ETs and her involvement in the we call it the secret space program for the lack of any other term, but it's basically what Richard Dole's been talking about, the breakaway civilizations. There's different terms over the last 20, 30 years on what to call this, but it's basically a secret system that hasn't been revealed to the general population. But now I think it's time to get it out, mainly because they're letting it come out. I think on some level they're hiring us experiencers and whistleblowers and secret space program people to come out and tell the truth, because years ago after Roswell they screwed it up and now they don't know how to correct it. So they're letting us correct it. Okay, back to you, TJ.
Well, depending on who you are, if you're interested in cosmology, we'd like to hear from you, and we are forming a group of people that can support each other in their findings of fact and their truth and their experiences. And so we welcome anybody out there that would like to feel like they're a paranormal researcher. It's a global qualification for people in all countries, all around the world. The paranormal research, it sounds a little more all-encompassing, so that's when we throw in ufologist, an alienologist, cryptologist, cryptozoology. Wow, I can't tell you how many people that talk about things like submersibles, USOs, and we've got some people that come in and speak at events around the world. And Janet and Ken have both been at these events. I only been at writers' conferences, mainly Mid-South Con, and then, I did one here locally, New Horizons. So I've done Mid-South Con in Memphis at the Hilton and New Horizons here at the Navarre Conference Center. And I'd like to have one with Janet and Ken again. I met both of them together, matter of fact, at the same time at the Mobile Mars Anomaly Research Society, Mars, M-A-R-S, with Louis Reinhardt, who sponsored that at the University of Southern Alabama, USA. So Janet and Ken and I got together after that meeting and decided to see if 12 to 13 people wanted to work with us, and some of them, if you're out there on Facebook, are still with us and know who you are in social media, and we decided to keep this going. And so Ken is going to be helping us, and so is Janet. Now, Ken, would you like to talk about yourself or how you think we should go about doing all this? We've skipped 2 years, but what's time anyway? Time, space, and gravity on the planet. Is there anything you'd like to share? I can hear somebody typing. I think it's Janet. Janet, you have such an excellent speaker.
I'm correcting the page because I wanted to apologize for Terry. Terry Ling Kyle was supposed to come on today, and she had a medical emergency with a family member, and she apologizes, and we're going to reschedule her. So, yeah, I was just correcting the show page because she's not with us today, but she is so sad not to be here, but, you know, things happen in life. So, but go ahead. Have Ken come on and tell us, answer TJ's question, and then we'll go round table here, like in a panel, so that'll be good.
All right. Well, Ken, you actually, I don't know where you want to start, but we've covered some things, but we need to get a linear timeline here. But you went from NASA when I was down there, and my husband was working at NASA, and you and I established when we met that we would do a book and pick up where William Tompkins left off as far as you and I. And you had his book when I met you. But you want to start with that versus going all the way up to disclosure when you went to – didn't you go to Washington? Were you one of the people at the original disclosures with Stephen Greer? Was that 2001 or do you remember, Ken? Can you hear me, Ken? Ken?
All right, can you hear me now? Yeah, I hear you loud and clear. I just had it muted. Yeah,
okay.
I was getting feedback, and I was trying to avoid that. So
thank you.
Here I'm supposed to understand all this high-tech stuff, but unfortunately it's been taken over by geeks, and sometimes I don't work very good as a geek. So, yes, back in the day of 2000, I guess about 2001, 2002, it was Richard Hoagland had gotten a hold of me and found out that I had maintained a secret archive of documents and pictures and evidence and everything else of everything we did during the Apollo program. And his position was, we need to get you as public as we can, because there's been a problem of people that want to keep the secrets and keep it hidden so long, and then certain things happen and they disappear and they're no longer with us. And now that I've turned 77, you know, I've still got a long way to go. I'm going to go to 180 to start with, so don't think 77's old. So we'll be doing good there. So what we did is we went to Washington, D.C., went to the National Press Club, and where we presented evidence that there were alien bases on the moon. And now we're talking about, holy mercy, gosh, how's that? Almost 20 years ago this happened. We're finding out that those bases I was looking at might well have been part of our secret space program, because there are two different events. If I can take a little time here, on the backside of the moon that we don't see unless we've got satellites going around, which we do, and the big crater called Tsiolkovsky, which is basically 150 miles across, and in the shadowed area of the way the moon was at the time, there's a cluster of 5 domes, and these are blended in pretty much into the lunar surface in the area where it fit. Whereas one of the other best pictures of bases on the moon are on the front side, close to the edge of where it would be heading around the back, and they're all lined up just like we do in the military. We line up all of our buildings. In this case, there were 5 domes all lined up, and then a road track in between them, as well as over and 4 very huge domes, which were most likely very large antenna array for communications back with the Earth and out into deeper space. So the things that I got involved with, I guess, after putting my time in 14 years at the NASA space program as a contractor, and now I'm finding that those things that I was so proud of may not have been the first ones to get there. Yes, I was very, very pleased and opportunity to work with all the different astronauts that went to the moon. And now here I find myself, I was the youngest kid on the block back then, by the way. I was only 26 years old. And so many of these heroes of ours that took the rockets to go to the moon on the space program that the whole world was watching, now most of them have passed on. And Buzz Aldrin's one of the few that's still left around that I work directly with. So if Buzz is hearing this, no wonder I understand why he got all shook up when he went down to the South Pole to the base and stuff that they're exploring there, and they had to rush him out and get him back home, because who knows why he was all shook up about finding out that stuff that he thought he knew could well not have been everything that was going on. So here we are. We find ourselves here in 2019, and we're at a point of what we're calling full disclosure. And the main thing that I talk about when I am invited to go to different programs and things is there are still a lot of people out there that have been involved with the space program, some of them with the secret part of space program, some of them part of the military. And a lot of them have passed away, but a lot of them are still there. And I tell them, you need to come forward, because the only real protection you have is the same as like Hoagland told me. Make you as much of a public person that's come forward, and be sure you've got the evidence and documentation to be able to prove that what you say is true, the same that I do. Then you're safe, because they don't want to. They, big capitals, they, whoever it is that is trying to maintain total secrecy, have a ways of let's say that we cease to exist, and whether it's direct, indirect, or otherwise, I don't want to get into that, but I feel a whole lot more safe since I did come forward and made the archive that I created, hundreds of pictures and documents and evidence. Yes, go ahead.
I have a question for you. Yeah. So one of the catch-22s about when people have involvement in the secret military or whatever is that it is a secret, and the government or the powers that be block the information getting out, and you don't have proof of your involvement in that faction. So, like, for example, our dear friend Andrew Bushago, he has no physical paycheck proof or anything like that, right? So you have to get your proof by finding other witnesses that have been in the program. Right. And, and they do die all the time, like William White Crow just passed, Robert O'Dean passed last year. The people that have the story, or, Neil Freer was Anunnaki research. We're losing, stitching all these people that have pieces of the puzzle. So we really encourage you from coming out. But what do you recommend to people? How do they get proof? How do they gather? And is it really that essential right now to have absolute proof? I know Robert Lazar couldn't prove that he was in the directory because they go like Orwellian fiction. They erase us. They can hairbrush us out, remove our names from the database, and we don't even exist anymore. So let's talk about that. What can we do to gather proof, or what should we do instead of that? Go ahead. Back to you, Ken. Thanks.
Okay, you bet. And when we talk about being able to come up with truth, in my case, I had the actual documents from NASA and the government on where I was and what was going on, and as well as the pictures and the slides and the videos. All of those things are available. Now, when it gets down to exactly what else was really going on, I've discovered that, and thankfully I was able to had a contact with Dr. Sasha Lessin, who is actually a professional therapist and psychologist and I guess a psychotherapist, I'm not sure. But in order to go to hypnotic regression and go back, because now I've discovered that in addition, now help me out here just a little bit here with Andrew Bushago, the way he wound up with a lot of his activities being proven is there are several of us that have also been involved in the space programming, going through the jump rooms and being able to go there. And going back through my history and my life, I find out even as a very young child, even at 12 years old and younger, where I was actually, and I think part of it, I'm sitting at my desk and I'm looking at a picture of my father, who was a captain in the Army Air Corps before it became the Air Force during World War II, and he lost his life in World War II. And I've often been wondering whether or not he really did, because that was also at the same time that President Eisenhower made his arrangements with extraterrestrials. And we're getting to find out that a lot of us, as we were young, have been tapped because it's part of the family in reality. So one of the things we discovered through hypnotic regression on me is that I was also on Mars at the same time that Andrew Bushago showed up there and William White Crow, and I was piloting what I call the little hopper, which is allows me, due to the reduced gravity of Mars compared to the Earth, take this little crap and basically make an arc and go from one location over to another. And the way that we wound up proving each other's events is that people that have come forward that have been parts of the secret, I call it the secret space program. It's not that. Let's call it, at any rate, proof that they were actually there, that I actually wound up involved in the space program more than I realized that I had. Now it's kind of hard at times to realize, and you go back and look at what was going on in your life that where we're now getting information about our bases that are on, say, our Homo sapiens have bases on Mars as well as the Moon, and with a fleet of deep space spacecraft, not flying saucers, but we're talking about craft that are more than a mile or half a mile in length. That is where some of the smaller craft and things can go. So there has been a breakaway civilization going on right under our nose that most of us aren't even aware of it until now that it's all starting to come out. And part of that has to do with our direct contact with extraterrestrials. That they've been very patient watching us humans on Earth mature and grow to the point where we can handle it. The biggest problem we had is, like H.G. Wells did back in 1939, I think it was, did a radio program where they were talking about how a spacecraft landed and these aliens, these big giant machines are going around and they were killing everybody. And onto the radio, people, they didn't hear that it was a story they were telling, a make-believe story. Some people actually jumped off the top of buildings and committed suicide. They thought that there was a war going on with aliens. So us humans had to wait until now. You know, if you go in and you ask people, do you believe that there are aliens out there? And everybody said, well, of course, we're not the only ones in the universe. So we're at a point where it was being kept secret for fear that people would panic. We're at a point now that we're at a point saying, no, we're frustrated with the governments, and I say plural, all over the world. Governments have kept all the secret, and of course they thought they were doing it for our own good, because we weren't ready to handle it. But now, Homo sapiens, us human earthlings, so many of us have had direct one-on-one experience with extraterrestrials, different varieties, different, I call them species, but different types of intelligent beings from other parts of the universe and galaxies. So we are at a point now where the governments are trying to figure out, okay, how can they come forward, disclose that we have been in contact for the last 40, 50 years. Maybe, actually, if you go back in history, you find out that they've been involved in the growth of humans on planet Earth to where we are now advanced far enough in technology as well as in maturing as a species that we're ready to join the rest of the intelligent beings in the universe. So not that they're all are. You'll find out, kind of, those of you followed Star Trek and things, and they sometimes would land on planets where the people were not as advanced as we are getting here on planet Earth. But we're at a point now where we're ready to take our own position within the intergalactic sentient beings throughout the universe. And now it's coming forward. And that's why I'm really excited in being part of what we're being dubbed as a full disclosure. We've had little bits and pieces that have been trial tested throughout the universe and throughout the earth and other nations that people can now say, well, yeah, I think there's probably, because there's enough people in going on a one-on-one type direct contact with the various different types of species. And as usual, there's probably some negative beings out there that would like to take over things, but the majority, the truth will come out. What was that little saying the guy said? I think it was during Harry Potter, and the truth will prevail. Let's hope that it does that way. So that's kind of what I see going on right now. So those are people out there that have had direct contact with extraterrestrials or experiences themselves. Now's the time to come forward, because you have protection of the masses. And I say masses because we're not out here by ourselves. So many people have come forward now with their personal experiences that you'll just be joining the clan. And like in ours, we were actually, when you're going back and finding out where we were and what happened, then we back up and prove the other person that's come forward and says, well, I was doing this and this in the part of the secret space program. They can say, well, as a matter of fact, you can check the reports, and I have the records on mine to prove where I was. And that helps us get the facts and the truth out there for the world. So just stand by. We're getting the truth out there. Does that sound about right?
I love it. Thank you. Yeah, I love it. Let's get people out there telling their stories. TJ, are you there?
I am.
I wanted to
Can
ask
you hear me?
you. Yes, I can.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about the Allied Command, because we've been talking about the secret space program and calling it different names for all this time, but you were involved in the Allied Command. That was what your faction of the secret space program, for the lack of any other term or way to describe it, was called. Can you tell us about the Allied Command?
Okay. Well, I'd like to preface that with we were chosen, and that sounds funny, but I believe even William Tompkins used that word. Ken, I don't know if you can put your hand on his book, but or can see it, but you could let us know the name of William Tompkins' book, because what I'm going to bring up
Selected
about
by
the
Extraterrestrials. It was called Selected by Extraterrestrials.
Right.
Selected by Extraterrestrials. Very good book. Very good book.
Okay. And Ken and I had talked about doing what we're doing now. And in answer to Janet's question then, selected by extraterrestrials, I would like to suggest that we're all extraterrestrials just visiting this planet, as I said in the beginning of the show. Doesn't mean that... well, goodness, I'm sorry about that. I guess you could hear that because it's in the inside of my computer. But Janet, can you hear me? Uh-oh.
Yes, we can hear you. I'm muting so you don't hear, because I'm taking notes while you're talking for the page, because I had to redo our show page because Terry's not here. So I'm muting in between. So if there's a little delay, just give me a second. It takes a second for the button to click. But I do wanted to, okay, so we're talking about the Allied Command.
Yes.
And the faction that you were involved with was called the Allied Command, and Robert O. Dean talked about the Allied Command. So we're going back, 20, 30 years, and he's verified. This is how the whistleblowers and witnesses have, we have proof for each other. This is what we started with. What is proof? So,
all right. So
tell us about that faction. Let me go on mute.
The Allied Command that Robert O. Dean talked about was in the European theater, okay? And as far as I know, he was in the 60s. And to be honest with you, he's a little older than me, and bless his heart, he's passed now. But he was he made it all the way up to Master Sergeant in the United States Army. And he worked at Supreme Headquarters, and he worked directly for, I don't know how to say the gentleman's last name, but he was the SACEUR, and that is for the Supreme Allied Command in Europe, okay? And so working in the European theater, now as the planet goes, we're just a blue marble out there, and where I have a mind's eye and a point of origin would be from prior to coming here in 1951. And with the group I work with, apparently as we grow older on the planet, we can look back at our past lives and they will show you a video. So it really helps. It's just like you say, out-of-body or near-death experiences are crossing over where you may or may not see a video. Some do, some don't. But I guarantee you sooner or later you're going to see this video that's playing in your head or in the crystal of your head. But going back to the beginning with the 50s and the 60s. Now, our narrative... Wait a minute.
I'm going to say the video. You're saying that who showed you the video? The ET showed you a video?
Yes, I will show you a video, and I don't want to get into too deep about the soul and coming to the planet, but if they've known you before they were born, and I verified that, if they knew you before you were born, how do they send you to a planet into a container? It's a part that is going to be hard to explain to anyone unless you've died and gone to the other side or been close to death and returned. So there we separate with the Allied Command about those that came before, or those from the heaven came, and how they discovered the planet here, and then how we get down here. And the Allied Command allowed that to happen, at least with me, and I had to work at it because Janet and I are doing a book now of how we see coming from birth till we pass over with our loved ones. So to me, it's all the same story, whether you're telling it from ancient history or Sumerian text, or when it gets translated correctly into theology, or even more so books and religions, whether it's folk life or historical events. How do you really prove that? And now they're learning in the New World that that's exactly the problem, because a lot of it's been lost on the planet due to wars or famine or earthquakes or volcanoes or interruption all the way back to Atlantis and Mu. So without me going into my past lives and what I've been shown, I like to start with the narrative that we can prove with Kenneth Arnold in June 2027 over in Washington. And I've been there, and I have been exposed to physical reality in 3D to prove it to myself as far as places. So we start with Kenneth Arnold, and we also talk about the Foo Fighters, and then we move on up. That's in the 47 to when we established the Central Intelligence Agency due to the Roswell crashes. And so all of that at that time was controlled in America, and there's sightings all over the world. But let's start with Robert O. Dean and the Supreme Headquarters in Europe. And he was in the Army. Yes, please do.
Yeah, TJ, because it's one of the things I've been discovering that fits right in with what you're saying is with regards to who we are and what we are. I'm actually the third child born to my mother, and but I was totally different than the other two boys. My oldest brother, A.R. The other two have passed on, but he was both of the A.R. and Jimmy had dark hair, olive type skin more, and I had blonde hair, blue eyes, and fair skin. And it winds up that at the age of 3 years old, I had I was born with a cyst over my left eye over there. But when I was operated on, they used chloroform as a form of anesthesia instead of what they use now. And my heart stopped beating, and I was actually considered dead for 48 seconds or more. And but my life and who my personality and everything else was a lot different than the other two boys. Now, since then, I've been able to discover that the being myself now, and I'm finding out more of what I've done in the past lives, stepped in to take over the shell, if you will, that I was at 3 years old. So I'm discovering, I think, TJ, we were speaking with a gentleman just recently, and he also had a near-death experience. So many of us, taking a look at our past life experiences, may well have had one of these near-death experiences, and giving the opportunity for our other selves to be able to step in and continue on with not only just learning more about the existence of intelligence throughout the universe, but then of the life that we may not have been able to complete. So we just had the opportunity. So I consider myself as a walk-in, and it's only from getting the facts and the truth. When I had a tonsillectomy at the age of 5, the doctor said, "Oh boy, you came the closest to staying dead on me that anyone ever did." And I never thought much about that until I got a lot older, and then now meeting other people such as Martin and the others, that they had near-death experiences as well. And when you compare it to who and what we were before that experience, could well find out that we're a new person. So here I am.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I would think that was important because we are needing to follow a linear timeline for humans, although I was taught vertical timelines. And this is very interesting because it changes the way we think in our open thinking. Both our left brain and our right brain, we call open thinking now, knowing more so than we've ever known as far as education and communicating that in wisdom. But the Allied Command, we need to take everything as reincarnates and discarnates as spirits and think of, meaning ghosts and things like that. But in the paranormal world, in the metaphysical world, in cosmology, as the fact that we have all this knowledge and information that is intangible in many ways. There's tangible you can physically see, feel, touch, taste, smell, and those that you cannot. So we call, in the Allied Command, we're going to do tangible and intangible, just like we do products and services in today's culture and reality, and that pretty much goes worldwide. But we're learning to talk in all languages, and at one time we didn't have to talk. We had not so much that we needed a tongue, but I would suggest that we are all a huge program finding how to make us better containers in the universal whole, and there's a minimum of 7 levels of the universal whole. So when we, as the Allied Command, began as journalists and writers and our reporters and authors, consultants, researchers, we're looking for an artist. We're looking to talk to each other in cyberspace and communicate. So we'll start with the Allied Command, speaking of everything prior to benchmarks in our timeline as the ancient history, but we would like to use the Roswell story as the UFO Association begins everything prior to Roswell as the benchmark. So please mark that on your calendar if anyone's working with us in our ACO club, our ACO association. And you're welcome to find all that. We have it in the CIA files and the UFO files, meaning Federal Bureau of Investigation files. Those are all open for you. And really just go look on the internet, and you'll be surprised at how many of the old documents you can find. Now, how does that affect all of us? Well, we know we're all here as a birth, life, death process. Now, many of us don't. We're pretty much accepted, I would say 70, maybe 80% of us now that believe in, I guess one might say, aliens or extraterrestrials. And at one time in my life, I wanted to separate the two. Now, how we speak is a very important part of this ACO. And the Allied Command, the people that I worked with, some were on the planet in containers, and some were off planet in containers. Some were humanoid, sentient, intelligent beings, and some were high technology, and some would say clones, and some would say AI, or artificial intelligence, that's considered itself alive in the way that it thought, but it wasn't a biological. And you see a lot of this in movies, and a lot of what we know in this reality we can trace by what we've experienced. And even if we've experienced in our imaginations, or even in today's time in the cinema or the big screen or with Hollywood, there's many movies. So and the Allied Command wondered about some of the things I got to talk about with my husband. Now, after Robert O. Dean in the Allied Command, there was my husband, Thomas Ray Morris, was my second person to know about that. I've talked to many through the years, but as an investigator, as an investigative reporter, however, I was usually under contract or in uniform, and I wasn't allowed to talk about it to other people. So if you will, go back and look at my beginning YouTube under TJ Morris and talking to the Allied Command, and you'll learn we're going to have separations of communication, levels of information, and disinformation and misinformation. So we always use levels of 3, just like we do with our minds. We have reptilian, the brain, the monkey brain, and the I guess you could say human, or the forefront, the front part of our brain. So, but we use the power of 3 in a lot of things. In the Allied Command, there were those that had walked the earth and could go back up in spacecraft. And so that level, I always called the Allied Command, and they would talk to the Supreme Allied Command. Now, we have a Supreme Allied Command on the planet. Now, as far as I know, this is a mixture of extraterrestrials and humanoids, meaning like I am. I was born here. I have a body. I have a birth certificate, and I can prove that. And then I did have a DD-214, and I had there's another form in there, and then I have an honorable in my living room, Navy. But they also told me I would never get out, and I would never get the kind that I really wanted with everything on it. And my husband didn't have one with everything on it. And just so you know, in the Allied Command, we worked extraterrestrially off and extraterrestrial on planets. And this is a reality for many people that have access to need to know, or was chosen with a need to know to work or to learn how to be a human on the planet, and those that were not. And I can't tell you why some are chosen, like William Tompkins, or selected by extraterrestrials, or Bob or Robert O'Dean, or Thomas R. Morris, or Janet Kerr Lessin, or Ken R. Johnston, or myself, Theresa J. Morris. I was born Theresa J. Thurmond. However, the knowledge I carry in my head is like these videos that you will see if you, from the time you're born, and then we have all the dash in there between the year you're born and then whatever you create with the dash until the year that you die. And a lot of that you see on headstones, and even that's going away these days. But we know that we have a container, and while the container is here, it depends on, we like to say we come with a clean slate, but in the metaphysical world, the spiritual world, we mostly say that when the veil is down, we come here, or we go into our parents, and you may grow biologically, but it's not until like you cut the cord from the original creator body, and humanoids I'm talking about only, not AI or clones, but humanoid bodies are born inside a female womb and water, and it grows and creates what it does. And we could just say by nature, like you do plants and flowers, et cetera, depending on how they grow. But once you cut that and you take that first breath in as a baby, then that breath of life from this reality could or could not be your actual breathing in the essence or the soul of that body that has a inner spirit or inner soul. And we're working on all of this with humanoids the way we know as a collective consciousness, a critical mass mind to understand that. So when I came here, and that's where Janet's starting with me, is she just wants to get a linear timeline from the time I was born. But now all these papers, I know that I was inducted into the government in May 67 and contract. And back in the day when I was in, there was hard copies, even when Ken and I worked around NASA or with people, and they were hard copies, but even those got misplaced. And we always had a medical file and a personnel file. We had civilian and military. Now, off planet, not so much. So I learned about computer reality, plasma screens, things like that when I was a child, not knowing what I was learning or that it mattered. And we'll cover that in the book Janet and I are doing. But for the Allied Command that Janet, I believe, would like me to talk about is that there is a level off planet. A lot of people call it the secret space program, or the UFO secret space program, or the Breakaway Civilization. There's many names. Basically, those that come and go in this solar system. Then we have the interstellar, and we have intergalactic, and we actually have interuniversal. So, however you want to break it down. And Michio Kaku, I think, likes to break it down. And then we have, like, I put on here CE5, which I met J. Allen Hynek in the early 80s. I was working 67 to 2017 is my timeline inside government paperwork trail. I got trained in military personnel. I got trained office personnel and management. I got trained in business and information security. I got trained with weapons, without weapons, with needles, without needles, how to extract information, how to know information. Basically, I did the standard facts of who, what, when, where, why, how many, and sometimes how much. But we did all that learning, and we did this in space as well. However, my part, I learned after being on Earth and that I had abilities was psychologically, was to learn ESP, telekinesis, certain things that we can do. And I thought everybody had these skills. So this is what we're learning in the Allied Command. But we all didn't know who each other was. And there's various levels in the psyche and the soul and the essence. And we're trying to find out how many people have a blank slate versus how many have memories of past life or are chosen by extraterrestrials. And so basically in the videos and the YouTubes you'll see around cyberspace in the digital community, you're going to hear a lot of talk about aliens, extraterrestrials, UFOs, and you're going to hear about factions, good, bad, and different. And you're going to hear about those that are on the warring nations and those that aren't, those that want peace. And in the religions, you'll hear the light souls and the dark souls, and depending on who you have, and we've had a lot of people talking about that. So we have a military, we have an intelligence community, and they're not necessarily the same thing. So in command off planet, I met beings that said they found us here. 28 to so many billion years ago. It's over 28 million that I can recall. And they do know, as far as I know, in some of my lives, this is not my first time. So I'm considered, in the word that they taught me, ascension, which I didn't know when I first learned it, and with the magic of the, I guess one might say brand, I guess to keep me doing what I'm doing here, it's a pyramid with energy coming off of it. It's like connecting the pyramids again. We had digital grids and energy, or 0-point energy, if you will, or ways to make energy. And I believe that we're going to redo that again. I strongly suggest that through the millions and if not billions of years throughout the universe, not saying necessarily the solar system, but definitely in various realities, that we are learning now with quantum mechanics, quantum physics, people like Neil deGrasse Tyson or Michio Kaku, people like that, they're big names in television, that they are starting to suggest that, yes, there is something else out there, and there are other dimensions and other universes. So we'll see how that goes. But Janet, what would you like to know? Should I need to go to you and let you talk about whatever you want to talk about to be part of this live show?
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, there's a lot of directions we can take this, but it's the secret military. You know, you have your active things. Like Ken had his in the background. He wasn't aware. We have our military or our government, whoever they are, they do what's called memory wipes. But what happens is the memories don't stay down. You start getting bleed-throughs. You start remembering things. And what I did is I did a lot of hypnosis regression. I had some conscious memories. I couldn't tell anybody. There was no safe place to tell growing up. But what we're focused on right now today, besides being an experiencer, which is very important, being an experiencer, is our involvement with the military. And I think that's one of the critical keys. Can we get these pieces of our memory? Because the military does a lot of things where they have tactics to keep the information secret. Besides the memory wipes, I'm not sure how it works. I've had exposure to both the extraterrestrials and the military. I'm not sure what parts have been wiped out and what I do remember, what's left to remember. But the Greys, when they put me back in bed, they sprayed one time. It was like a spray or a sound. I'm not sure what was going on. A misting, and that was supposed to mind wipe me, and it didn't work. And so this one time I was very angry that I didn't get my mind wiped because I had to go to work, and then I had to deal with the energy of having been abducted, and then I have to go, like, put on a different hat and go to work and pretend that everything's normal, right? So I wanted to talk to all of us how we've been able to balance the information we know, the information that's in our subconscious, and it affects us on a core level, and what happens when we have memories coming forth. What do you do about it? When I have a memory, I have what I'll call a screen memory, and I have ongoing contact with extraterrestrials. I don't know if the both of you are having ongoing contact, but I believe I'm going to my other existence. I think we have simultaneous lives, because I'll come back and I'll explain to my husband, well, I spent all last night and I had this other job I was doing, or I'm an ambassador on a Could somebody mute, because I'm getting a lot of feedback. Mute when you're not talking. Yeah, and so I'm going to other planets. I'm working other jobs. I'm an ambassador on other worlds. One of the projects I'm involved with that I'm aware of, and I married my therapist, so I married Dr. Lessin, we talked about earlier. He's my husband, so I can get up and he'll come and listen to me. But, you don't have to be to a therapist. If you have somebody that will listen to you about your dreams and help you analyze and deconstruct it, or you can get yourself a journal, or, just put your phone on record and then listen to it later. You'll get some more insights. So in my reflection that I have, I've uncovered more and more of the mystery, and I'm in these programs where one of the programs we're involved in relocating homeless people to another planet where they're given, they have these beautiful homes that have been abandoned, and they're being given these homes and all the materials, whatever they need. Food is free. They can bring their animals. I see a lot of cows and sheep and chickens and pigs, a lot of livestock, and it's like, here you go. Reinvent the world, and we're here to support you. So that's one of the projects that I'm involved with. But there's many, many others. I'm in council meetings. Some of them are small with just maybe half dozen to a dozen people, and some are large with over 100,000 people. So I'm going to ask both of you, what do you consciously remember? What are some of your bleed-through memories? Like sometimes I woke up one morning and there was an owl, a 6-foot owl standing beside my bed, and it was full. The sun was up. It was not dark. It wasn't dawn. It was like right after dawn, full sunlight, and I'm going, oh my God, there's an owl. I wasn't afraid, and I just said, oh really? And as soon as I said, oh really, to the owl, and this is all telepathic, the owl shape-shifted into a gray, and then we had a dialogue. So on what level is this happening for you as an experiencer, as a person that's been involved in the secret military? And I'm not going to go into mine. I was on Johnston Atoll. That was my labs. I probably have others, but that was the big one that they made me remember. They did not, erase that memory. And that was like, okay, it's time now. I'm allowed to talk about this. Because if they don't want you to talk about it, you're not going to remember it. They're going to erase it, or they'll re-erase it. So back to, I guess, Ken next. We heard TJ for a while. Ken, what do you remember? What's subconscious that has come forth? You have your overt secret space, or your overt military NASA thing, which was your front program, and then you have the back end story where you were on Mars and all kinds of stuff. So tell us a little bit about how did you integrate your mind wipe with what's going on now in your life?
Okay. One thing I want to add real fast on what you mentioned it. Interesting enough that NASA had me on a program called Solar System Ambassadors. And it's very interesting that I got chosen for that, because that actually was one of my responsibilities and duties in the past life activity that I had. Now, your question was, please refresh me now. I'm going to tell listeners, be careful. Let me throw this in real fast. Don't go trying to text and use computers while you're driving. This young lady was doing that came in and rear-ended me just a year ago, and has caused me every once in a while when I'm talking, I'll have a dropout and I'll freeze up to ask somebody. You just asked Janet okay, what was the question? And then you can hit that, and then I can pick it back up and go again. But it's a real frustration whenever you're having to overcome situations like that, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. So forgive me if I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about for a moment. It gives me a moment to pause, and then I'll pick back up, and we'll go from there. Now, what was the question again, Janet?
Okay, so I wanted you to tell us about, like, there's memories that are wiped and then they bleed through.
Okay.
I call them screen memories. Do you have any memories that bled through that made you go, aha, there's more to this than that? And then you, investigated that through hypnosis or meditation. Yeah, so that type of thing.
Right.
And I'm going to go on mute so I don't make noise.
Yeah, it's interesting because those are the situations that happened in my life, even when I was very, very young, in the second grade. I'm going to go back that far. That in a little town called Hart, H-A-R-T, Texas, 560 people in that area, farmers and everything else, and it wasn't even much of a town. 2 grocery stores, and that was about it, and granaries. Anyway, we had a neighbor called the stepdad that I had, T.C. Ray, and said, "Did you guys see that lightning strike that hit just real close to where you live?" And our closest neighbor was 1.5 miles away, by the way. So my 2 brothers and I, we put on our rubber boots and we got dressed. And we went across the dirt road. That's all we had out in the country, and over into the field. And it was an area of about at least 50 feet in diameter of the grain field was absolutely just flattened out. And now, being the youngest one of 3 brothers, the older boy, AR, he's not going to try to. He knows he could outrun either one of us other 2, and it would be not very sophisticated for him to do that. So he's coming along. Jimmy, he's no big deal, but I had to prove that I was faster than them, so I outran both of them to this area and saw this circle. And on the far side of this flattened circle, crop circle, if you want to call it that now, was this big whooping crane. It was a bird, and interesting that Janet was talking about her owl. In this case, was about a 4-foot tall whooping crane. They're almost totally extinct right now, but it was standing on the far side of this flattened out area. It turns its head, it looks at me, turns its head back the other direction, takes about 3 or 4 steps, opens its wings, and looks like it sort of jumps there and goes poof. It disappeared. Now, when AR and Jimmy got over, I asked them, "Did you see that bird? Did you see the bird?" And they asked, "No, I didn't see anything." Well, interesting enough, later on in my life, I started, not much later, I think it was continuously there, I would start having dreams in which we would have craft would come by, land, and stop, and pick up one of my friends, go and spend the night or the weekend with them during school in the 3rd grade, and Dick Clark, that was his name. I remember that. He and I were out in the field, way out in the distance, where there's a little pond, and we were out there, and it's getting close to sundown, and we were watching the moon was visible like it is right now today from a full moon last night. At any rate, there was a craft or something. It looked like it was coming from the area of the moon and headed down over towards the horizon of the earth. And about the same time, it was getting sundown. We didn't get back into the house until about 30 minutes after sundown. And of course, we got our fannies almost busted for not coming in when dinner was ready. But those are types of experiences that have hit me in my life of being chosen or picked, or whatever term they want to use. And I think it's all a part of going all the way back to my dad and the Eisenhower and the direct contact with extraterrestrials. And I think extraterrestrials like to keep it within families, and quite often it's very common for us to find that more than just one person in a family, they wind up that over the generations that selected by extraterrestrials, like he has it in his book. So that's what I found myself in those type of experiences. Then as I started, I would have dreams of things that went on, especially on Mars. And one of the things I remember very much, this was way before we ever landed a spacecraft on Mars in the public space program we should have. But in my case, when this one particular dream kept coming back and forth quite frequently, is I would be standing around on the edge of the big giant canyon on Mars, and I could, in the out-of-body experience, I could just lean forward and put my arms out and kind of like a bird, I guess, and fly over. And I could fly down into the valley and over areas where had been civilizations, thousands and thousands of years before. In fact, and part of the history and learning, we are somewhat the descendants of the Martians, if you will. And by me going back and looking at some of the ancient ruins and things, I know where our origin was before we wound up having to migrate to a more hospitable environment here on this planet Earth. So interesting enough that a lot of us, when we start getting together and start talking and bringing up the memories, having had in this particular life of mine of 77 years, I'm finding times when there's a missing time, but yet after the hypnotic regression, I'm finding out it wasn't missing. I was just busy doing another activity over on Mars, such as a pilot. I was flying the little craft I call the Hopper, and this is where I met. Let's see, the two people there. One of you, Janet, you guys can help me out here. I'm having one of those dropouts. Andrew Bashago and William Whitecrow had gotten themselves in a situation, and I came in with the Hopper, landed it close to where that there were still some kinds of creatures and beings on the planet Mars that kind of like a pterodactyl or something, but I was able to land it close and pick them up. Now, these stories, we start talking about these now, and that's probably part of the reason why we get our memories wiped, as they used to call it, or do now, and because other people will say, oh, hogwash, oh, that's a bunch of hooey, and you know what? Until they've had the same experiences or had the opportunities to get with someone like Dr. Sasha Lessin and have a hypnotic regression and going back and finding out not just in this current life experience of mine, 77 years, go back in past life experience and find out other things that we've been involved with. So we are really, really into the age and the time of disclosure of not just what's happening now, but in our past lives. We're going to find that, well, I'll throw this in real fast. My wife, Fran, she and I, she was raised in Canada. I was raised in Texas. We both wound up working for the Boeing company and up in Seattle, about halfway in between for both of us. And both of us went to an organization called Parents Without Partners. Well, a month and a half later, now that's kind of crazy, most people would say, but a month and a half later, I asked her to marry me again because we found out now that we had been a couple in our past lives. So there's a lot of experiences that we are in this shell, as TJ says, and that's what our human bodies are, is being used as a shell. And what we're doing is learning and picking up where we left off, and hopefully now the disclosure is coming more and more real. A lot more of us are going to be able to come forward and find out just exactly who we are, what we are, and what part we have played in this whole role of the galaxies, if you will. So if you want to pick up with that, either one of you other two, come right on, Janet or TJ.
Go ahead, TJ.
Well, we all have a purpose. And what I've learned is we're definitely all part of an experiment. And from what I can see that the government knew and what Bob O'Dean talked about is we're definitely being groomed for something, but no one has the exact understanding of everything. And it depends on your role in this game of life. And it's part of what found out the group that Bob was with that did their own study, because and a lot of what he said rung true with me, even though he worked at a different time than I did, was the fact that we had the military industrial complex, as we might say, but we'd said the military, and then we had corporations and the World Banks, blah blah blah. We had all the different levels of humanity. But the entire problem was knowing that there were people coming and going forever, and that was pretty much proven through everything, whether you can read it or not, or know of the archives, or just know that this was common among those at the highest levels of cosmic top secret, or those that were in the military. They were much higher and more aware than people that we would put in the position of the United States of America, which now the John Q. Populace is out there finding out and demonstrating it. There are many others, and it had to do with the whole planet. And back during World War II, now this is what I understand as part of my truth. And Bob Dean said everything is true because each one of us is our own universe inside our own mind with our own God, right? So everything is true. So ET high-tech civilizations, at least in this reality, this consensus or this universe that we think we're sharing together, has a critical mass mind, and you'll hear that. It's the critical consciousness, and some call it the A field. Urban Laszlo does the A field, and I talked to him extensively years ago on the phone, and we did emails and stayed in touch. Urban Laszlo, so read his book, The Theory of Everything. After I'd gotten it, and he was very open to me, and then we were working with Europe and different people at a high level of intensity, I would say, in the mind, and how we all have evidence, but we're all in some kind of intensive survey of civilizations, and there's various levels of that. Now, what was concerning when I came in 1951, after the 47 incident with Roswell, there were those that wondered if they were malevolent or hostile, and that's where we get the abductee stories with Betty and Barney Hill. There were plenty before that, but that's the one that was well known as up north, but they were put back. And so when my husband and I were trained, my husband said yes, but they were put back. And when we ask about the various levels of extension of why we come and go from this planet, and Tom didn't like to talk religion or theology or history or anything to do with the creator or God. He just didn't. He didn't want that to shape. And most of the time, that was the prime directive, was not to mess with those in containers down here that were put here at various points in time. So the point of time that Tom found most curious was Hitler forward, and from World War II and the World War, and then the atomic age coming forward, and them dealing with, I guess you'd say, microcosm and down to the CERN, or the smallest microcosm, or the smallest below atom quarks and all of that. But he was changed, and Bob was changed working in, because you come in, and they both were like me. We come in a human form, and we just know with the clean slate, or so we're told from the veil forward, is that we're born, they don't let us remember the videos prior, our past life as reincarnates or reincarnitiates, or, there's a circle of life, and I think many of the Buddhist and many of the older religions believe in that. And then now with our ascension and the way we live in America, and I am one of those, as I learned about ascension and they taught me that. So as far as I'm concerned, I worked with the benevolent, meaning those that were good, or at least those that seem to be wanting us to progress and help us with things. Now, some people only meet the bad people, are the ones that say aliens don't help us, and they're taking us and they're doing evil things to us. And then a lot of people are changing their mind, realizing they were part of some experiment. They may or may not have chosen to be here, but maybe we're all part of an experience. Maybe we're all knowing that we're all a part of a long line of beings that came before us and will come after us, and we're developing. So, that they don't tell us the whole picture. They only tell us what they need us to know. And so some feel like they're working with evil, and some feel like they're working with good, dark and light, or however you perceive it. So there's different ways to think about that. And each person has their own free will. We think we have free will power. Anyway, control over your inner sanctum, or your inner self, your inner thoughts anyway. Unless you blow your brains out, I guess. Stop working your container. Otherwise, you're here with the rest of us. Now, I have lost some of the people in my group. My husband is one of them, but he died of natural causes. My daughter died due to cancer. He died of pneumonia filling up, but I had to watch him die, and that's not fun. It's watching the container give out. And, you start with usually the lungs and then the heart and then the mind. I've learned that from my daughter, watching her. But anyway, I believe that life is immortal and they're going on to another level of existence, and I want to believe that, but nobody told me that. But I think from the stuff I've learned working with extraterrestrial beings that look like us, that is what goes on. Now, why we have a military, I do wonder, but I believe I don't know this, but from what I've seen and what I've experienced and what I've been allowed to know with my talents and skills is that we're here to heighten our sense of information for our soul's level or to grow. Now you can look at that scientifically, or you can look at that, in the ways of the old or old world religions, or however you want to, through the lenses that you have, or those, your perceptions, your observations. But I do believe there is a form of human intelligence, whether it's, I don't know how many levels. I do believe there are various levels. And like Janet was saying, she's been in many places. Is that our oversoul? Is that our higher self? Is that parts of ourself? Yes, probably to all. And where are they? Maybe we were finding out with the slit theory and the way that we deal with I guess you could say laser, and knowing how things fall into particles and waves like on the ocean and all that, that there is a physics and a way to understand now that we didn't know. And the longer we live, the more closer we get to a higher level of understanding. And I believe that's why we're here. The human race is a hybrid race. It always has been, always will be. It is genetically manipulated. And various people and various cultures and climates are put together for whatever reasons, maybe to make better DNA, because we have 65 strains at least. And some of them are being more like Ken said, light and dark. I had my brothers, some of them were dark skinned, some were light. Same thing over in Norway. You'll see light skin and dark skin in the same family. In Brazil, blondes and blue eyes with dark hair, dark skin, and brown eyes. In my family, same thing. My daughters, I had 3 blonde hazel eyes, and the one that just died was an ET experiment, I think, and I believe I was told to do that because I remember my thoughts in making her versus the others were accidents. But I thought about, I wanted a brunette with blue eyes. I got to think about it. I worked with, to me, angels are higher selves of myself, I don't know, or beings to create what I wanted, and that's what I got. However, because she was Irish and Brazilian, and that's what the gentleman told me, that was her DNA, her sperm donor, and was that he was Brazilian and Irish. And then when we had this cancer deal, and we were working with the Nordics and those, like, we have a history of those that channel people, and I guess to answer Janet's question, yes, I'm a psychic medium, and the way that we talk, for lack of better words, we're all psychic. We're all remote viewers. If you want to be, you can learn a protocol for that. But some of us choose to use it and practice it and become very good at it. And I use tarot cards. And my daughter, she always, from the time she was born, she knew she was from another planet. She knew she was not from here. She knew she worked in space. And she still read the Bible, believed everything there, and Jesus taught, because that was an extraterrestrial to her. And he came and showed us the way to come and do it and leave your body and go back, and she was okay with that. So I'm so glad that gave her solace and made her feel good about the reality. And, to each his own. However you have to function, however you have to put your reality, because you're born alone and you will die alone. In other words, you come into one container, and when the container decays to a point or has been disrupted where it can't sustain life form, then it's just like an old car that stops working, no more. It no work, so it gets torn up or whatever, you're somewhere else. So I want to believe that because I have memories of past lives. So I hope that helps some. And Janet, it's your turn. Next. Off of mute, Janet.
Okay, so what are we talking about? Where are we? Okay, so ask me a question. Let's pose a question to do the next round, because I kind of
How do you feel
it was
that,
very interesting. I got.
How do you feel that all this coming together of people, because we're talking about things of each individual has a different understanding of what their truth is. Each one has a different understanding of what they know and believe, depending on their experiences, and they formulate it in their mind. So let's say that for the sake of humanity, that we all come to this planet and we all have a clean slate until maybe we get to reach a certain point, or extraterrestrials jive us or make us remember or whatever. But let's say that we all are equal. We're all got a body. We all have a clean slate. Now what? why do you think that us coming forth as the Allied Command Secret Space Paranormal Researchers is part of the future? Or why do you think this is important to those that maybe don't have the same experiences?
I think because the secret to longevity, clean green energy systems, all these things that are being held secret, which are affecting each and every person alive, are being hidden from us, kept from us, and we need to get that information out there so we can become a conscious civilized civilization and go into the stars as was laid out for us in the 60s by Gene Roddenberry. Those people in the 60s and the 50s and before that, like Robert Heinlein and Isaac Asimov, who were people that were working in World War II, and then they came out of that. They were in the military, and they came out and they're working as authors, and they're writing these science fiction stories, and they were on task to tell us these things so that we would begin to wake up and become conscious, because I think that humanity is meant to be reunited in space with our extraterrestrial space family. And some people, that sounds corny, but that's really what's going on. We've been disconnected from the totality of existence by agreeing to come into this prison planet, this slave system, and we are all corporate economic slaves. We come in, we have to work. We have to work for our food, work for our living, or perish, and it's not given to us, so we have to work. And we often end up working in jobs we don't really like. So I'm here to bring forth the new era of higher levels of consciousness. You might want to call it ascension. But I think it's just an integration of that which we already are and know on some level. And it involves us, each and every one of us, becoming conscious. And so it's, on some level, it's our duty to take these memories that we recall consciously, what I call the screen memories, and to go into it deeper so we can become a conscious being rather than this unconscious being. And one of the things that I had was a strong spiritual practice. I practiced Tantra. And in Tantra, you come into this veil of forgetfulness, and the memories of who you are as an eternal being, as a soul, are anchored in your spine, in your base chakra, in an energy system called Kundalini energy. And as you work on your different issues that you have psychological, psycho-emotional issues on each chakra level, on each energy system. And when you clear those issues you have regarding your past lives or your current life or your religious programming, your cultural conditioning, your conflicts you have with perhaps maybe you identify as one orientation and you're born another, into another gender. Everybody has stuff. We all have stuff. There isn't anybody alive that hasn't encountered stuff in their journey through life. So we deal with these issues. We clear them. We heal them. We interact with the people that are in our karmic circle, and we forgive each other and love each other, or perhaps we harm each other more, but we hopefully eventually resolve those things. And through this path, our Kundalini awakens, and then it activates and goes through our chakras and out our head, and it reconnects us with Source all the way to, the highest dimension of existence, and we begin to remember who we are. As we remember who we are individually and collectively, we awaken consciousness and reconnect with our soul family and our extraterrestrial, non-Terran, and other dimensional forms of ourselves and our family. So we, and it takes a lot of work to do that, and yet it happens to some people spontaneously. They have spiritual awakenings. They become conscious. I had a client who called me and said, I was grocery shopping. I was in Walmart or Kmart or something, and I looked across the store, and my eyes met this man, and all of a sudden I remembered everything. And so we don't know what the catalyst, and he didn't know why was it that when I looked in this man's eyes, suddenly I knew all my past lives and how I came to be here. And he said it blew me away, and I almost passed out, but I had to just act normal and walk out of the store and get in my car and collapse and just sob, because now I'm awake and I'm conscious. So I think we're going to wake up, become conscious sooner or later, so it might be better to do it sooner rather than later, and consciously rather than unconsciously, because then we're more effective and we can be, these are opportunities to be kind and loving with those in our lives along the way. So anyway, I don't know if I answered your question. That's what came out of me, kind of like a download, so thank you.
You want to make a crack at it, Ken? Why are we helping each other with this Allied Command organization? Why do you think it's important?
Well, the reason I think it's important is it gives us each an opportunity to work on what we needed to improve. This is a training. I look at this existence that we're in now, and the shell that we're using is the learning device or learning ability. So that, for instance, well, I guess I could probably, let me try this one on for size. Yes, I'm a man. I've with children, etc. in this lifetime, and interesting enough, when I was the third child being born, and my mother was totally convinced she was going to have the third child was going to be a little girl. So for 9 months, I was Patty Lou. So my good friends jokingly call me Patty Lou. Of course, I joke with them back too. But the thing I'm getting at is that parts of our existence, parts of our being, and knowledge that we need to gain, Earth has been an excellent learning planet where we can come back and take on a new shell and hopefully overcome. Now, for instance, I guess someone mentioned Adolf Hitler before. Let's hope that he has a better shell and has come back and, and more for loving and caring instead of the way World War II went. So we're in a position of growing and learning knowledge-wise, and take advantage of that by doing your own research, dig into the information, find out more truth to what's been going on. Like Janet talks about, I got involved in hypnosis actually as a teenager, and when I was in military school, military academy, I would hypnotize some of the students and help them have total recall when they got ready to take exams, and that helped out there. So when I had the opportunity then to get someone, a professional, to help me go back and regress, because I fixed it so that no one else could hypnotize me without my permission. And now I'm in a position that I'm going back and finding out a little bit more about who I was, who I am, and what left I still have to do in this. Right now, and people say, you're how old? I said, I'm only 77. I'm going to live to be at least 180, and when I'm approaching that, I'm going to push for 200. So, there are people right now on this planet that have exceeded well over 100, 150 years old, and a lot of it has to do with your own mind, and this is all part of the learning here. If you say, well, my grandma and my grandpa, they died when they were 65, I probably will too. Well, that's true. You're pre-programming yourself that's what's probably going to happen to you. So we learn to be much more positive and hopefully gain more knowledge of the universe, of intelligent beings and other areas, as well as either a male or female, and that makes you a much better whole person. So that's a little bit far off the beat from talking about Mars and the moon and space and stuff, which is my forte, if you will. But I'm just picking up kind of where Janet left off, because she is an expert in a lot of these fields too. So that's about my only input on it. If you want to pick back up, TJ, and we'll go from there.
All right. Well, regarding where I understand that we are together, I would like to suggest that all of us come from somewhere else, and that while we are here, it is my understanding that everyone learns at their own pace. So many of my friends know that time is based on the way we think here, linear around the solar system. And people like Linda Moulton Howe's been around 75 times, maybe 78 now. I don't know what month she was born. 75, 76 years. I've been around 67 years around the sun. Ken, 75, and Janet, 60, what, 2? Janet, 63 or 64? Where are you, Janet? 60? How old are you? How many times around the solar system? Around the
65.
sun.
I'm 77
65,
now, so I'm still at
65.
Oh, you're still young.
Okay, you're
65.
77. She's 65
Correct.
and I'm 67. All right, so numbers shouldn't mean anything, but what it
Nope.
is we've learned from being born, we live and we die, is that our containers age, and that's the way the rules. There's universal laws, celestial laws, terrestrial laws. Down here, well, telestial. So there's telestial down here, terrestrial and celestial, we say in other world religions. So there's things we just can't, we call them nature's laws because we can't change them. So the empirical way we went from Aristotle and everything that he could explain, and the metaphysics after physics, I guess, that couldn't be explained back in the day. So we are working with metaphysicians, and we're doing our part. Now, empirical, we say science, we can measure it, take it apart, figure it out, bring it down to the lowest form or lowest measurement, figure out what's what, and all the way down to the microcosm, meaning the micro. There's a whole universe out there. And then we have various disciplines, and we have aliens in biology, or things we can't explain, and we call those alien to us. We don't understand them yet, or they're sort of unexplained. So we have that type of reality. Now, what I'd like to suggest is, at this point in a narrative in the world in which Janet Carol Lessin, Dr. Alexander Philip Sasha Lessin, or Sasha in quotes, he's a PhD in anthropology, and we've worked together for many years as the ACE, which he chose instead of ACO, but Ascension Center Education and the ACE Folk Life. And anthropology covers that because folk life falls under that in the university or in the academia. Now, there's people all over the world that are interested in UFOs and extraterrestrials and aliens. So we've developed in the Allied Command the Alien Contact Organization, and then the CE5 falls under as contactee experiencers. So we have aliens, we have abductees, we have contactees, and we have experiencers. Some say abductees saw aliens, while it tends to be contactees of their own accord work with experienced extraterrestrials. So is it a choice or not? That depends on who you speak to. Now, most of what Mutual UFO Network, which Janet and I have paid membership, I don't know if Ken, did you ever pay MUFON dues? They're expensive now, but they didn't used to be. Did you ever pay $80 to $100 to join MUFON? Or I think it may be down to five or 10 a month now online. Have you ever paid dues to MUFON? Maybe not. Ken? Okay, well, anyway. Janet, can you hear me?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I hear you fine. I'm sorry, I pushed the wrong button.
Okay, did you ever join MUFON? Like, I've paid an annual dues in 2008, and then I paid monthly.
Oh, we're quite a few years ago I did, but then I was being invited to be speakers, et cetera, and stuff, so I wound up not having to pay my dues or whatever. So, but I've done my share.
Yeah, you've done your share. So now we've got, there's been various UFO associations or UFO organizations, and they're out there on Wikipedia, which is one of the places people still go. And I guess Janet had some problems with her computer because she fell off. But folks, or she had to take a break. But we together are forming our own group, and if you'd like to join us, the Allied Command Organization, we have aliencontact.org and the alliedcommand.org, and we're going to work together for that. And now my dog is going to bark. No, Coco. Well, we all have, even if they're extraterrestrials, and there's various factions out there, And we talk about the reptilians. We talk about the insectoids. We talk about those grays, the short ones and the tall ones, and the ones that look Chinese and the ones that look Japanese. And there's something to that. And then there's historically blue beings on the earth, and there's something to that. Red beings, red, yellow, black, and white. They're precious in His sight, right? And we talk about gods and deities and demigods, and we talk about heroes and superheroes and super soldiers and military and to defend us. And now, from after Reagan and Star Wars, because Reagan had a sighting and knew, and he was briefed. My husband was there at Camp David when he was briefed, and he and Reagan got along. So I'm going to pick up a story for those that are interested after Robert O. Dean's story with my husband's story, if anybody's interested, Thomas R. Morris, Sergeant Morris, Agent Morris, and pick up on TJ Morris and the Allied Command story. And I have a book, if you're interested in joining us, Ken, it's Ace Life Coach. Ace, and it's a good book. It's only $7 off of Amazon. It gives you an idea of ACO and ACE back 4 or 5 years ago while my husband was still alive. But Ace Life Coaching or Ace Life Coach on Amazon by TJ Morris. And I didn't spell out Theresa Jeanette Thurmond Morris because it's too long. So Thurmond is my maiden name, Thurmond, but this is under ACE, ACE Life Coach, and it's by TJ Morris. And it's a purple book. It's got a question mark on the front. But you could start with that if you're interested in helping us. And it talks about us, our ACE Folk Life and our Alien Contact Organization. It talks about our event. Talks about all we're going to have 2 points there, including paranormal, metaphysical, UFOs, all the things you need to know. So ACE Life Coach, I believe. Let me look it up. I can't.
That's
folks,
available
you think
on
I wrote
Amazon.
It? Yeah, it's only $7.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And it's for what we're doing now. Let me see if I can look it up. ACE. I know this sounds funny, but I wrote it so many years ago, but it will tell you how we're getting started to help each other and how we had various ACE Life Coach, Health Coach. Well, that's not going to work. And folks, with today's browsers, and we need some new text. We need help. That's definite. If you're willing to volunteer, we'd really like to know about it. Let me try books by TJ Morris. Maybe let's see. These days you gotta know the answer, don't you? Books by Theresa J. Morris on Amazon. I wonder if it's in there. Let's see. Books of Theresa of Ascension, Knowing Cosmology. I wrote all those. Enchanted Development. That's when I wanted Janet. Where is ACE Life Coach? Taking up Theresa of Ascension. There's a lot of books out there, and I wrote from the Andromeda point of view because my husband and I were out working with these ETs off planet, and I wanted a point of origin, and I was only learned this year after my husband died about Beta Zeta, or being a betazoid, even though that's been used in movies and things. It was funny because it was Beta Zeta from Andromeda, and I had a guy ask me yesterday, what? Because he knew my husband and talked to him. What? Oh, here it is. ACE Life Coach. That is the name of it. Basic Introduction, Ken. So,
okay.
Oh my goodness, they raised the price. It was $7. They put it on $10. Huh. Well, I can't.
Inflation. It's inflation.
I guess so. In 4 years, so I haven't seen it, folks, for like many years. So $10 on Prime. ACE Life Coach. Be a life coach. Community, share the world's moments, and you can too, while offering various services. You can share responsibility for a person on company's overall vision and strategy, as well as day-to-day operations. So since the beginning, TJ has focused on simplicity while inspiring creative thought-solving problems with thoughtful guidance, suggestions, including product design. So as a result, ACE has become the home for visual storytelling for everyone from brands, artists, authors, co-creators, educators, musicians, speakers, radio show hosts, webmasters, and people with a creative passion. So find your place in our world as a life coach with TJ Morris. So I'm going to ask people if they'd like to join us. Would you grab that, because that will help you get into our conference. And hopefully the Allied Command officers, we have a committee. We are also journalists. I'm a senior professional journalist with SPJ. We have ACO News if you'd like to be a journalist. We have Russell, that will be back, Russell Brenniger Tuesday. He's writing an article for us. And if you're a paranormal researcher, we welcome you. We'd like to discuss about you helping humanity in our ACE Life Coaching Program, and we're going to certify some people in our reality with ACE Metaphysics. And we're going to have a good time together with what time we have left on the planet. All you seniors are welcomed, and even all you newbies, you neophytes out there wanting to work with ACE Metaphysical Institute and the Allied Command. I suggest this book because I wrote it years ago. It's not as old as some of the books I've written, but it's a good middle path for lack of money. But it has a guide for you to get started in our programs, how to educate yourself, and be a motivational speaker. Maybe you may like that, or you may want to speak, teach something in our metaphysical groups, and maybe work with the Allied Command. So ACE Life Coach, basic instruction. Now, the Ascension Center was presented to me by extraterrestrials, and I would like to keep that going forward, that this is a place to learn and to grow and to learn what CE5 is, contact with extraterrestrials, whether you learn from Stephen Greer, Michael Sala, David Wilcock, Ken Johnston, or myself, Theresa J. Morris. We'll be more than happy to help you. Now, I know a lot of you here are used to me doing ET Spirit Guide Tarot card readings, and I will be getting back to that just so we can grow our community. Well, Ken, we got 10 minutes left, and Janet, apparently, she hasn't been feeling real good, but I've also got Ken's Moon. It's revealing the dark mission of NASA, and it's his autobiography, and it's Ralph Kennedy Johnston, but he uses Ken like I use TJ. Ken Johnston Sr., and some wonderful pictures, his documents that he can prove, and it's going to be hard to prove a lot of things, folks, but this book, you got to get it. And then Ken's Moon, and now what's your other book, Ken? I've got Alien UFO Contact by Theresa J. Morris, Knowing. What do you got?
The other one that's already out now is called The Regression of a NASA Whistleblower. I figured, well, since I got tagged with that title, I might as well go ahead and use it on this book. And it's was one of the first hypnotic regression sessions that Dr. Sasha Lessin. There's so much essence and stuff in trying to say that in one mouthful.
Lesson.
Yep.
Lesson with lesson.
It's yep. Lessons with lessons. Yep. I hope he's listening to this and he gets a good chuckle out of that. But no, that book is out. That one's small. That one's only I think it's only like $10.
It's only $15. Yeah, that's good. The regressions.
The bigger book is the bigger book. The first one is a $20 one. But hey, things cost nowadays. Unfortunately.
Yeah,
wish I could give them away free, but
we don't put prices on them. But
nope,
they do. So yeah, they do. So folks, Kindle, Regression of a NASA Whistleblower, selections from a regression session with commentary. So that's Ken Johnston Sr. Yours truly, you've been hearing him. He's Ken. I'm TJ.
Yeah, but let's make sure they put Ken Johnston Sr. because my son Ken Johnston Jr. He says so often people say, "Oh, you're Ken Johnston." And he says, "No, that's my dad." So be sure you put Senior on it, all right? Or you can put Colonel or whatever else.
Now, Fleet Commander with our Allied Command and all our groups, we have so many. We have UFO Secret Space Command online, which is free for those of you that like Facebook and social media. And to learn with us and to be getting in some of our classes and how to get certified in our groups based on what you want. We have various things we're going to be teaching. And Dr. Rick Allen Miller is one of our teachers, Dr. Alexander Sasha, Ken Johnston, myself. And I do more metaphysical teaching, and we work with the chakra system and how to be a better person, and then motivational speaking we set up life coaching after we did not copy Werner Erhard or S, but that was back during the time when I began, and a lot of the motivational speaker groups got international associations of motivational speaker type groups, and we put together the Ascension Center, and now we've got the Allied Command. So we're hoping to help others. I'm an intuitive counselor, a tarot reader, psychic medium, and I will be coming back here to this location doing those things to help many people. And then I may be speaking in the future with Ken. Ken, I wish I could get you my book to take with you, The Ace Life Coach. I don't think you'll get it in time within a week. You know, I'd send it to you.
That's right.
With your address.
Okay.
Add it to cart. I can put on. Let me see if it'll. Well, I need your address, but I can get it offline. But right now it's Good Friday, everybody. So happy Easter to everybody. The perfect picture of hopefully raising your soul and your spirit to a higher place, and understanding that here in America we're set on being about ascension and raising your soul to that higher level. And while we're here, it stands to reason, doesn't it, that extraterrestrials out there may have a higher level generically across the board as a critical conscious mass mind from being around out there, flying around in the universe. But think about it. It stands to reason that some probably better than others, just like we have humans on the planet. Some are better than others, aren't they? And we don't know why some souls go awry. We think it's goodwill, but, you know, if you'd like to work with some good people, I don't smoke or drink, neither does Ken. We have good morals and integrity, and, of course, there's always haters out there. We know that. That's what I'm saying on the planet. There are people at different levels of spiritual paths is a nice way to say. They're all lead up the mountain sooner or later. Some later than sooner. Ken, you want to address anything like that? Yeah, please.
Well, I was going to say, I have people that have, just a minute here, I'll get them, that have come out and attacked me and saying, oh, he didn't do this, he didn't do that, he's lying, this, that. And all I do is say, hey, it's all been published. And since my first book went out, which has the autobiography, it has copies of all the documents from NASA and the government and proof of who I am, what I've been doing in this life and where I'm at. So if you hear somebody start running me down, just tell them, get the book, check it out, find the truth out, do your own research. Don't listen to Mr. Oberg. I'm going to go ahead and say his name. I don't mind. He used to be a friend of mine, but he wound up becoming, James Oberg.
He's in Russell's book as an engineer for NASA.
Yeah, well,
he has a good background. He just was controversial.
Yes,
he was wanting to be the main go-to person for Hollywood, wasn't he?
Yeah, but he took off Dr. Thornton Page. He took over doing, and as part of the debunkers, that whenever anyone's starting to come out with evidence and truth and things like that, they try to attack them verbally and ruin their reputations, etc. Fortunately, I've done quite well by publishing everything, and from my understanding, he almost got me killed when I was over in India doing lectures and contacted them, told them I was a liar, I was just there to steal money, blah, blah, blah. And once I've got on my wall here a letter of apology and saying they should have checked out first and find out that I wasn't the one that was telling stories and lies. It was Mr. Oberg.
So, I wonder who is being paid by to do that. You think it was the government, or was just Hollywood, or people wanting to protect their investment? It makes you wonder who pays people to be a disinformation agent, or to say that maybe he thinks his truth is the only truth and nothing but the truth.
Oh, no.
But I've seen your book, and I know the people that you knew, so we've been there, and reality speaks louder than words. So Ken and I were both in reality in Houston. And I imagine if you want to go track us down like you do your background checks, you'll find out we were both there. And it's up to you to put the pieces together, isn't it? So we have our story, and we're sticking to it. So we've both been in NASA in Houston, and if you want to play with us, that's fine. We're the Allied Command.
I think we actually sat in some of the same meetings with Dr. Werner von Braun, as a matter of fact. You bet. So,
so
we
folks,
can
that's
cover a little bit of history right there.
We can, and we're old folks, but the kids ought to get a kick out of it, and we're putting
Only
together
chronology.
everything. Well, yeah, after Roswell, and then after Robert O. Dean, and then after William Tompkins, it's our turn. Y'all can go play if you want with Emery Smith and the Bluebirds, and there's a lot of people that see the avions and the different things. I didn't, so not pro or con either way. I'm not judging it. I just have a different reality. So my reality is with the Allied Command and more military and intelligence officers. And a lot of us are veterans. Some had more need to know than others, apparently, but then there's good and bad in every group, and there's those that did and those that didn't, and those that do, and those that can't teach. So I guess, Ken, we're at the age where we got to teach now. I don't think I can do the things I did back then.
I'm discovering some of that myself. It's one of the nice things I like to do sometimes when we're speaking, and if the opportunity is right, I would say, okay, is anybody in here over 50? And a lot of hands go up. How about over 60? A lot of hands up. How about over 70? Very few hands up. How about people over 77? And I was like, nobody, hardly at all. And I said, okay, Respect your elders, because I'm 77 and I'm moving on to the next higher plateau of 200. So a lot has to do with your own attitude. Go ahead.
It does. I think our energy is the fact that we're here, those that can do and those that can't teach. But that's okay with me. I'm rising to the occasion. I'm going to do my part with Ken R. Johnston. We are the Allied Command. TJMorrisETRadio. Thank you for joining us tonight with American Communications Online. That is the company here in Gulf Breeze, Florida. Ken is in or near Albuquerque, New Mexico. Is it Beta? Not that they're going to come looking for you, but we'll just use Albuquerque as the headquarters for our Allied Command, and he's going to be fleet commander for putting all together all the people. Doesn't matter what association you're with or what, but we are the ACO News Group, and we are well journalists, writers, authors, and speakers. So get involved, and we're going to be doing videos too. So thank you. And Ken, if you can, come back Tuesday night with Russell Brenniger. We'll see you 8 to 10.
I'll look forward to it. Tuesday's good. On Wednesdays, I'm with all the cadets. So thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
All right. We'll see you. Okay. So Tuesday night, folks. Same time, same station.
Good night, everybody.
And we'll see you on YouTube. Look for us. Allied Command Secret Space Paranormal Researchers. Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. Let's see if we can't get out of here now. There we go. See if I can turn us off. Find us.